is Denise Rimes. I serve as president of the Southeast District, and I am delighted to welcome you tonight to our fifth webinar, perhaps fourth or fifth webinar about regionalization. We have been offering these since early February in an effort to communicate through as many vehicles as we can our impending plans for our respective districts' annual meetings in the Southern region. I am joined tonight by Mark Anderson, who serves as the president of the Southwest UU Conference, and also DeAnn Peterson, who will be back in just a minute, who serves as the president of the Mid-South District. Not with us tonight due to a conflict on our calendar is Margie Manning, who serves as president of the Florida District and who typically is on these calls, but as I said, has a conflict tonight. Before we get started, I also want to extend my deep appreciation to Christine Purcell, who is our information and technology coordinator for the region, and also from our staff, Connie Goodbread and Maggie Lovins, who serve us untiringly, answer all of our questions, and just generally keep us from getting arrested. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and we are looking forward to all of your questions. As Mark mentioned a couple of minutes ago, just because of the way this platform works, we can't hear or see you, but you can see and hear us. But you are more than welcome to submit a comment or a question through the Q&A button that you see somewhere on your screen, depending on what kind of computer that you have. And we will promise to get to all of those, particularly as we wrap up. We will save time for questions and answers. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague and generally really tall guy, Mark Anderson from the Southwest Conference.
Thank you, Denise. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. We'll go ahead and start the presentation, Christine. So we're going to start by doing some time traveling, talking about the history of the process we've been going through, bringing you up to speed on where we are now, and then DeAnn will take us through where we're going next. So we start with time traveling. We start in 2020, June. You're a member of a Southern Region UU congregation. We're going to jump on our blue police box, better known as the TARDIS, the time traveling machine from Doctor Who, and we're going to go back in time, Christine. So actually, we're not going back in time yet. It's 2020, and you and your church have joined with other UU congregations. You're covenanting together in worship, working for social justice, becoming elders, forming clusters, and growing our faith. So we're all doing the great work of growing our faith. And how did we get here? Now we travel back in time. So we go back to 1648. If you've attended either DBLE or SULE in the last 10 years, you've read the Cambridge Platform, you've fallen asleep to the Cambridge Platform. It's a wonderful document. It talks about how churches are in covenant with one another. We are in covenant with the church down the street. We should be working with them to make them better and for them to be helping make us better. The guiding value of the Cambridge Platform, is love your neighbor as yourself. Again, that trying to make each other better together. And the Cambridge Platform outlined many roles for the faithful. I believe the next screen is going to tell us about some of those roles. Nope. Some of those roles were teaching elders, which currently is our religious education programs, preaching elders or ministers, and the deacons of the church, the people that do the work of the church, whether it be cleaning the bathrooms or running the soundboard. All that type of work behind the scenes is that deacon work. So we travel forward now in our TARDIS to Orlando in 2010. So 4 years ago in December, the boards of the 4 districts of the Southern region sat down in Orlando and reflected on how we were doing. How were we doing at being in covenant? How were we doing at filling the roles in the faith? and how are we doing at loving each other? And the boards at that time found ourselves found ourselves spending a lot more time in governance than in building and loving each other. So we set out to change some stuff. Let's go on to the next slide. So here are the decisions this is the summary we've come up with recently on the decisions expressed in the Orlando platform. I encourage any of you that are interested in that background to go out and Google the Orlando platform and read the whole thing. It's a lot shorter than the Cambridge platform. So the decisions expressed, each district decides to set aside its own ends in favor of those of the UUA. So in 2010, there were 19 districts in the UUA, each of which had their own goals, their own vision for the future, and then the UUA board had their goals and visions for the future. And the next point is staff employed only by our UUA. So not only did we have different goals in the UUA, we co-employed staff with them. So the district could tell our staff, this is the goal, A is the goal, and the UUA board could tell the staff, B is the goal, and the staff would have to try and do both. So we decided to put aside our ends, our goals, in favor of the UUA board's ends. That we felt like one set of goals for the entire country, interpreted by the local staff to fit our situation, was better than having 20 sets of goals and staff being pulled asunder. Other decisions we expressed were training and empowering lay leaders, which we call elders, and we started to recognize that district boards duplicate the work of the UUA board. So some of that I've talked about with divisioning and overseeing of staff, but also in terms of fundraising and other things, we're trying to do the same thing the UUA board is doing. Are there better things for us to be doing? So this is our staff. This was a picture taken last September in Austin. So between 2010 and 2013, the staff of all 4 districts have worked together throughout the region, utilizing their strengths. We've grown the staff in that time. We've grown the commitment to our congregations. The attention we've given our congregations has grown in that time and has improved. So let's go on to the next slide. So in September of 2013, we sat down again. We went to the mountain in North Carolina. This is not a picture of the boards, but this is a picture of the mountain. The 4 boards met again to assess what had happened since Orlando, and figured out that we've lived into the new model of regionalization. So we started to live into it then. Since then, we walked out of that meeting with some goals that we're going to talk about later in this presentation, and some task forces to go ahead and continue to live into this new model of regionalization and experiencing the growth of our faith in the region. So next slide. So DeAnn, is this where you're taking over?
No, this is Denise.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
So I think you can summarize what Mark said by saying we had this realization that we were not adding a particularly large amount of value through our governance efforts. A lot of what we needed to run efficiently and effectively was certainly being handled by staff and was being handled by the UUA, both from an administration standpoint as well as from a governance standpoint. And what we were really talking about, we realized, was a greater need for more shared ministry. There's a role for everybody in this new model without having to spend a lot of time on the nuts and bolts of governance. And there are several components to this shared ministry, and we've been working on these very diligently since that last meeting at the mountain for the past 2 years. I mean, like, as in every week, we've been working on some aspect of this to try to determine what we would look like if we didn't spend a whole lot of time deciding deciding some of the nuts and bolts of governance. So you can see here on this list the 7 things that have been central to our concept of shared ministry. And I want to take a few minutes to walk you through those so you have a little bit better understanding of the concept of what this structure would look like. Next slide, Christine. First of all, we have elders. Now, there are likely some of you on the phone who may bristle at the phrase elders, and we wrestled with this for a long time. And in fact, we've had feedback on some of these calls, particularly from our young adults, about that phrase. But frankly, we couldn't come up with a better one. And so when we were thinking about elders and studying the whole concept of what elderhood means, particularly in some of our Native American history and in some other areas of our culture, we found this definition from the Live Oak Project. And you can Google liveoakinstitute.org to read more about this. But here's the definition that they offer and the one that we've adopted, the context in which we're thinking about elders. An elder is a person who is still growing, still a learner, still with potential, and whose life continues to have within it promise for and connection to the future. An elder is still in pursuit of happiness, joy, and pleasure, and her or his birthright to these remain intact. Moreover, an elder is a person who deserves respect and honor, and whose work it is to synthesize wisdom from life experience and formulate this into a legacy for future generations. At no point in that definition does it say anything about age. And so we fully expect that we will have elders who are, cradle UUs, 16, 17, 18 years old, who have spent 100% of their lives as UUs, or some of us who are perhaps a little older than that have spent only a fraction of our lives as UUs. The Cambridge platform really emphasizes the importance of elders in our faith. You heard Mark refer to that at the beginning of the presentation. And we want to make sure that we broaden that concept and really live back into that concept and honor and use the people who have expressed their deep personal commitment to the Unitarian Universalism. So here's how elderhood will work. And we could go into tons and tons of detail, but given the limited amount of time, I'm just going to give you some high level. There's a ton of information on the Southern Region website. And so I encourage you, if you're interested in learning more, to explore there. First of all, we want to formally encourage congregations to recognize their own elders who serve at the congregational level, who might serve at the cluster level, at a regional or geographic level, or perhaps even at a national level, on perhaps some UUA committee or task force. A council of elders works in shared ministry with the staff to help congregations and will help congregations recognize and celebrate elders and also identify opportunities for service. One important thing to know about here is in our previous model of governance, before we gave up co-employment, we weren't so much in a shared ministry structure because the boards were managers of the staff along with UUA administration. So we have really tried to move away from that, and through the elder program or the elder concept, trying to establish a much greater sense of shared ministry. And it really elderhood provides great opportunities for members to deepen their faith. There'll be lots of lifetime learning for those who want to grow their understanding and their knowledge and their commitment, and for those who have the capacity and the desire to enter into shared ministry with other congregations, other geographic areas, with staff, whoever the partners might be. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about clusters. This is a photo of the North Texas UU cluster, which is very large and very strong and a really fabulous example of an effective cluster. Clusters are defined as deep, mutually covenantal relationships that give both individuals and congregations an opportunity to practice and grow our shared faith. They're intended to be sort of these logical, reasonable, mutually beneficial clustering, gathering of of people or congregations, and clusters can be based on geography. So here we've got a good example of North Texas, affinity, whether it's social justice or stewardship or lifetime religious education, or even clusters of interest, folks who are interested in nature, for example, or some related topic that is also attached to the faith. We've currently got geographic clusters throughout the region. Not every congregation has access to a cluster, but we're working on that. Another example would be legislative ministries. A number of our states have those, and those have members of congregations who are interested in influencing, to the degree that it's legal, the political climate. We have in the Mid-South a large church cluster. So churches with membership over a certain size come together to talk about some of the unique challenges and opportunities. So we've got a pretty detailed plan for growing clusters, and hope that, well, not hope, we know that this will bring congregations together as the Cambridge platform suggested. One of the things on the next slide, we'll talk about, one of the things where we move away from governance, one of the things that we give up is some of the fiduciary oversight. And we know that this is a particularly sensitive area as people, as congregations contribute to the gift program. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They want to make sure that their dollars, their congregation's dollars, their contributions are being spent wisely. We have asked the UUA to handle the financial administration of our funds through a restricted funds process and what we're calling a covenant of understanding. It's a very detailed document that outlines who's responsible for what can change, what can't change, and who gets to say yes, no, or maybe when big changes need to be made. The Director of Congregational Life, Reverend Scott Taylor, to whom all of our staff ultimately report, will work with an interim fiduciary oversight committee for at least 2 years. So we're not going to completely walk away from fiduciary oversight. We've got former treasurers who have volunteered to serve on this oversight team to make sure that we haven't left anything out of the covenant of understanding, and that our practices translate well into the way that the UUA will help administer our financial situation. It'll be a committee of 4 headed by Scott Taylor, with each district appointing 1 member for this interim fiduciary oversight committee. And they'll focus both on finances and staffing levels. We were very careful to make sure that the work that we've done to build out this amazing staff that we have is as protected as it possibly can be, given all the economic opportunities or lack thereof out there. But it was really important for us to make sure that we maintain consistency and continuity with our staff. So the Fiduciary Oversight Committee will be helping to oversee that as well. And then along with the Director of Congregational Life, the UUA finance staff, and UUA Stewardship and Development, they'll meet annually with the Fiduciary Oversight Committee to review the budgeting process, to review all the fund accounting, and certainly to keep a finger on the pulse of our gift giving, GIFT, generously investing for tomorrow. I always forget that acronym. It's an important one. Okay, next slide. Our staff support, again, Mark mentioned this. We have an amazing staff. How many times have I said that? However many it was, it's not enough. But they have been working with us every step of the way in shared ministry to deliver services and training and education and support to congregations, to help us building out the elder program, to help us develop clusters, and all of the other constructs that we think are critical to continuing to build this faith. The field staff, including the administrative staff, will be employed by the UUA. Up until now, The districts actually employed the administrative staff, which is very small. But everybody now is going to have the same personnel policies and procedures and pay cycles and all of the rest as members or as employees of the UUA. And we have every intention of maintaining our current staffing levels into the foreseeable future. Again, Ken Hurto and Reverend Scott Taylor have built such an amazing team. It would not serve anybody well to lose any of those folks. Now, the piece that I was curious about on the next slide is, so we turn over our governance to the UUA board. How do we make that linkage? The UUA board has gotten smaller, lots fewer people to do that linkage. What is it that we're going to need to do to make sure that governance still exists and exists properly? So in keeping with and honoring our congregational polity, the UUA board has agreed, and we have had discussions with them, to be accountable to the member congregations of the Southern region, certainly through General Assembly, which has always been the primary vehicle for linkage, and also with by the UUA Board of Trustees' responsibility for conducting deliberate and regular linkage outreach to congregations and congregational leaders in the region. Just as a point of information here, in the UUA bylaws, other than the possibility of bringing business resolutions to GA, the districts have, it's not an association of districts, it's an association of congregations. So we created this sort of middle judicatory that had some, limited ability for input, but we're not set up to serve any great purpose. I don't want to minimize the work that hundreds of people have done since the districts were formed, but our congregations can still take things to General Assembly, and there are still mechanisms to do all of the things that congregations have always been able to do to have their voices heard, regardless of whether we have districts or not. On the next slide, we have the last piece that I wanted to share with you, and that's the Regional Advisory Council. You're looking at Reverend Scott Taylor, to whom all of our staff reports. I think I didn't mention that Reverend Ken Hurto is our regional lead. So everybody in the Southern region reports to Ken, and then of course up to Scott. Scott is an incredible talent, an incredible mind, extremely devoted to this work. And he is creating an advisory council of 7 to 8 regional leaders. The representation on that council will include leaders from congregational boards, from religious professional groups like the members of the various chapters of the UUMA, cluster leaders perhaps, and even some of our underrepresented constituency populations, some of those folks who have traditionally not been at the table, who we need to call to the table, or want to call to the table. The responsibility of the council will be to provide input to the staff about program priorities and goal setting. So what's important for us to get done? Where do we have opportunities? Where do we have strengths? What's going on out there in the field? And the committee, the Regional Advisory Council, will also assist Scott, the Director of Congregational Life, and the regional lead, Reverend Ken Hurto, in their assessment of programming impact. How well is this shared ministry really working? So I'm going to turn it over now to DeAnn. In case that you lists don't work for you, DeAnn's going to give us a visual of how all of this fits together and take it from there. Go ahead, DeAnn.
All right, so we have a little diagram that shows some of the, as many of the linkages, connections between all of the various pieces as we could supply in a graphic. And it looks kind of like a nice little spider web connecting things from the congregations to the UUA Board of Trustees, the items that Denise just finished talking about, Regional Advisory Council, elders, clusters, and then the UUA board governance, and then the staff working to help implement what we set as our end statements at the General Assembly. So in the first column, we have how congregations honor their elders. And those elders are provided the resources to help serve the greater region through their congregations and through resources that the region shares. And then you can also have linkage directly from the congregations to the UUA board and back and forth. So you can see that if you've got the graphic in front of you, congregations and the UUA board directly linked through various methods, linkage, General Assembly, and just directly calling the UUA board if that's necessary. In the second column, we have UUA board linkage, like I just said, in between there, between the board and the congregations. And then there's the Regional Advisory Council that helps provide feedback to the staff from the congregations, and staff listening to the congregations, and congregations talking to the staff. So there's through potentially this Regional Advisory Council with Scott Taylor, in addition to the normal way that the congregations contact the staff, which is, well, hello, Connie, hello, Maggie, how you doing? Can you come help us? So we don't lose that. Those are still there. But there can be other connections, and this is more a strategic connection that the Director of Congregational Life can use. And we're represented on that so that we actually have, eyes and ears and question askers, right, directly talking to Scott Taylor, which is a really useful thing. In the way I wanted to say this is, if we were going to get rid of governance boards, what we want to build is better than what we had. And so each of these elements to us makes it so much more about serving the faith rather than, well, my favorite thing, bylaws. It's more about building the faith. And in Denise's, and I think Mark says this too, about evangelizing the South. And so these are about connections and relationships. So these are systems that are more management of relations rather than governance. Simple as that. So you can see in the center column, elders connecting back and forth between that shared ministry component of the staff with congregations, and then the clusters, of course, connecting too. And then in the far right column, we have all of the connections that occur between the hierarchy of policy governance with the UUA board and the General Assembly, helping to guide that and directing what the staff can do to help us meet our ends as a UUA. So very interconnected, and I don't know, I'm excited about it because it feels like we're doing more ministry to change lives and help strengthen congregations in the South here. So a little diagram for you. And then of course, the big blue line across the bottom of it, we talked about, okay, well, we can build structures and we can put all kinds of structures in place, but let's have a conversation of how we want to be with each other when we're done with this. What would it look like? What's it look like between the staff and the elders and the congregations? What do we want to be? How do we want to be with each other? And that covenant of understanding, an amazing document. Man, the hours of work that went into building that and talking about it and redlining it. And it went to Peter Morales' desk. It went to Harlan Limpert's desk. It was seen by the attorneys, in addition to all of the work that we put into it. It's an amazing document, and I'm really, it's something to behold. So if you get a chance, you might want to check that out. It's pretty cool, the way we want to be with each other through all of this. So, Christine, go ahead. And, well, I'm ahead of myself then. I knew it was coming, and I just missed the slide. So this covenant of understanding, it's a promise made in faith through our UUA via the Director of Congregational Life that has full financial and management responsibilities in the Southern region. And it covers assets. We had to talk about transferring all of our assets to the UUA, and that has been an amazing experience. I represent Mid-South District, And we had, well, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but we had a few funds where we had, some disaster relief, and we had leadership developments in a couple of funds. And we were able to place that together with the other districts, so that there's actually a pretty good size pot of money available for leadership development, for the elders, for scholarships to, I don't know, we haven't decided fully yet, but to scholarships to DBLE and SULI, and I like the new name, Schoolie, small congregations that we're having at Camp McDowell the first week of June. I see Connie grinning at me. Yes, Schoolie, I like it. So helping with these assets. Now, that doesn't mean that these assets are all in just some big old lumpy fund that our UUA could come in and say, swoop down and say, no, you can't have that relief money for hurricane relief on the southern coast anymore. No, these are restricted funds. So they still meet the original intent of what we had set the money aside for. And I know that with Florida, Margie's not with us tonight, but they helped contribute a great deal to this leadership development fund. So all of those funds are still available for us to be able to use in the southern region. Denise talked about all of the employees being supervised directly by the regional lead. I don't know if you've talked to Connie at any point, and her opinion of being co-employed and how difficult that was. And I know that there was times from my own congregation that, hey, Connie, can you come visit us? No, I'm up in St. Lawrence. And it was really tricky to do that, because she was supported by both. And then, you ever had two bosses? How hard that is to work for two bosses, because they always give you conflicting things. So this being supervised directly at the UUA by the regional lead and not having co-employment is very helpful for useful management of the staff. And then, of course, the thing that helps support all of this in the southern region is the GIFT program. It's a pilot was last year. This is our second year in it. Things are going really well. There's more to be done. I'm thinking we need to do a little more PR with it, but things are progressing. And you, as leaders of the congregations, can really go out there and make sure that your congregation is working towards or being at the 7% level of your budgets, and making sure that you're up to date on what you've pledged. And it's super important for us to be able to continue with all of this work that we're doing and support our staff. And most importantly, it's about being in covenant with each other. We are a covenant of congregations, straight from the Cambridge platform. What is the major way that we are in covenant with each other? We support each other and we support our staff. It's about finances. So help make that happen for the southern region. So back to our TARDIS. I love Doctor Who. In 2015, we've got congregational leadership. We know that's out there willing to help become elders. We know that we want to pretty much preserve culture identity of each of the districts. I hear that at Mid-South all the time. We've got our own special culture and we want to preserve that. So if we get away with, do away with the governing board, do we not get together anymore? No, we still have annual assemblies that we get together and we have training sessions and seminars and potlucks, our favorite thing. So do we still get together? Absolutely we do. That's one of the things that we like doing. Lay leaders serve the faith through elderhood and cluster work. I know that I'm signed up to help with the Elder Council, and for at least the next couple of years to help with this transition period. And I'm excited about that work. Bylaws don't excite me, but Elderhood, because it's about shared ministry, really does excite me. I think it's really, really important and going to be a lot of fun to help support congregations. And a covenant built on history of lay leadership. How are we together with those lay leaders? What are the skills you bring from DBLE and SULI and soon from Schoolie? All part of working together to build the faith. So we affirmed our vision from the Orlando platform to work together to grow the faith in the southern region. That's where we're at in 2015 with all of this work that we've done at the current time. And where do we want to go? Well, it's about our theology. You know, we talk about this shared ministry thing. It's about being together with each other. It's what UUs do and do it well. So when we started talking about this conversation of how do we want to do the regionalization, what are all the ways that we want to build a deeper and wider relationship to strengthen this faith? And I remember when this happened. I mean, it was for me, it was really at the mountain, because it was all of the boards all together at the mountain. And it really shifted that it's about relationships, and removing the governance actually gets our structures out of the way of our theology. Getting our structures so that it's more relationship rather than governance. And that catches up with our theology that we share. So in April, at our annual assemblies, the 4 districts will ask our delegates to vote on a resolution to disincorporate our district governance, to move towards a strengthened and new relationships that help make us a faithful difference in the world. So what do we need? We need you to go to annual assemblies and ask questions. I mean, there's been a lot of brains sitting around every week talking on the phone about this, but you know, we could miss something, absolutely, and or see something that needs to be emphasized a certain way. So all of your questions, all your feedback is absolutely essential to us. Go back and share this information with your congregations. If you have people who can't make it to these webinars, and we have 2 more, the weekend of the 28th and the 29th, invite them to join us on that webinar. And if they can't make it, then this PowerPoint is available on the Southern Region website. So you can take a look at and share this deck with anybody who has questions or comments or wants to be a delegate. Make sure that you're encouraging and facilitating the naming of elders in your congregation. This doesn't happen without help. So you're feeling the need to serve outside your own congregation walls because you've served on the board at your own congregation and you've got a good skill set, then work towards, you know, facilitating, helping other people be named, or yourself be named to assist with the elders council or clusters, or, I mean, there's just going to be so many jobs. There's going to be subsets of the elders council, lots of things to be done. Like I said at the beginning of this slide, send your full delegation to the annual assembly. If the vote is no, that needs to be a real vote, because I'm not telling you which way to vote. That's absolutely 100% true. If you totally disagree with this, then, you know, you can vote no, but you need to be at the annual assembly to be able to do that. So send your crew, send your full delegation from your congregation there. Like I said, consider your role as an elder. Invest in leadership development, your own and your congregations. Send people to the leadership experiences. Send people to the leadership experiences. Not just one, but send at least a couple, because it always is necessary to have a team come back. When one just comes back, it kind of gets lost to the congregation. But when there's 2 come back, there's that synergy effect. So make sure that there's teams coming to the leadership experiences. Send people to General Assembly. Make sure there's money in the budget to go to General Assembly. Look for ways to make sure that you choose your delegates. Educate your delegates so that they know what they're voting on ahead of time. There's bylaws changes coming with this. The trustees are working to pare down their own bylaws so that it's easier for them to do linkage and monitoring and be more about the faith, forwarding the faith rather than governance. So make sure your delegates to the General Assembly are knowledgeable and know what to do with voting at the General Assembly. And then, like I said a few minutes ago, 7% for gift. It doesn't happen without financial resources. So that's what you can do. Help us. So by 2020, we've hopped in our TARDIS and here we go. And what do we see? We see congregations covenanting together in worship working for racial justice throughout the country. We see people covenanting together to serve as elders. We see congregations joining together in clusters because we're stronger when we're together, when we're working together for growing our faith, making sure that our faith, evangelizing the South. The South needs it. Evangelizing. So 2020, kind of beautiful. So, where are we? Are we at a question? Are we? Yes, we are. Thank you, Christine. So what I'll do here is I'll queue up the questions, and I may not have all of the answers. I know I don't have all of the answers. So I'll request our help from our able assistants here. We've got Scott Cromar asking first. In the blog post, the devil is in the details. Boy, have we said that, haven't we, Denise? It says, a vote for the elder council members will not be required since it's not a governing body. Question, how will replacement members of the elder council be selected as the terms of the inaugural group expire? How will we ensure that people with a diversity of opinions and backgrounds are selected? And I am going to hand you off to our queen of the elder councils, Denise Rimes, to help fill in for that one. Go, Denise.
Queen, I thought I was a princess and now I'm a queen.
You've been elevated.
So it's a great question, and we found an interesting twist as we were planning this out. In 2 of our districts, we have the officers get elected at the annual meeting and begin their new roles or continue in their roles, re-up if you will, immediately following the annual assembly. And in 2 of our districts, the new roles take place in beginning of the fiscal year, July 1. So there was that sort of difference. And what happens with, we have new officers in 2 districts for a couple of months, and then if the vote is for dissolution, then all of those official roles go away, then what? So that was one thing that we had to consider. The other thing that we had to consider was most of our boards have reduced in size. In fact, I think all of them have in the past 3 or 4 years. And there was very little turnover that was going to happen in the president and vice president roles. And so what we decided to do was, since the president and vice president would be elected again in 2 districts and had already been elected in 2 districts, if they were willing to serve, the presidents and vice presidents would be the inaugural members of the elder council, the leaders on the elder council. If one of those individuals did not want to serve again or their term was up, then we solicited interest from other members on the board. So as a result, we have 8 names, 2 from each district, who have been nominated as incoming officers in their current board or continuing in their current board. And so they will lose their formal governance roles and move over to the Council of Elders.
Cool. Thank you, Denise. Second, Connie would like to add more to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm wondering if a piece of this question is what happens after that. And I think maybe Mark had something to say about that. He was sort of typing in something. So Mark, do you have an answer for that? Or do you want me to just sort of blather on? Okay. Well, so what happens after this, the initial group will be in relationship with the congregations. So congregations will be recognizing people that they consider elders in the work that they do within the congregations. So they would put people forth. And in relationship to the Elders Council, the Advisory Council, and staff, people we would be talking about who would be eligible to be coming on to all of those bodies. So it'd be a collaboration amongst the congregations, the professional organizations like the Ministers Association and Loretta, and staff, the Elders Council, and the Advisory Board. That's how those folks will get chosen. So I'm just wondering if that answered Scott's question a little bit too.
Okay.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Second question, Scott again. How will the members of the Regional Advisory Council be selected after the end of the terms of the inaugural, I can't say inaugural tonight. Oh, right. Similar question about ensuring a diversity of opinions and backgrounds on the RIC. Absolutely. We had a lot of conversations about how to populate that council in particular. And one of the things that we talked about that we had to make sure that we recognized that the intent of this group is to guide the director of congregational life as to the needs of the congregations to be able to meet the UUA ends. Okay? So director of congregational life is kind of in between that what the trustees are wanting and what the congregations are wanting. I hope they're not mutually exclusive, but you get the idea. And so one of the key points here is this working group, this advisory council it belongs to the director of congregational life. Now, obviously it behooves him to assure that the whole southern region, diversity of opinions, backgrounds, what have you, is represented in those voices. And so it's his, and it behooves him to make sure that he's not just hearing all of the yes people. Okay? So we're leaving that one up to him. That was one that we talked about, that we're letting him do the deciding on who belongs on this council. You know, we put our initial people on it, and then it's up to him. And knowing Scott Taylor, if you've ever had the chance to meet him, he is one of the most fabulous ministers and managers that I've ever seen. And I've had a lot of managers in my life. And I'm sure he'll use the group that he's currently got to help name potential people for that group. But I really do trust Reverend Taylor to be able to assure that all voices are being heard in that group. So anybody else want to wave at me to add anything to that, or are we doing okay? All right.
Hey, it's me again. It's Maggie.
Yeah, Maggie, go ahead.
So I would like to add to that the council is a quite diverse council. We do have a community minister, a professional religious minister. We have a young adult. We have a very kind of expansive idea of how to get the best input for Scott. That then, of course, comes back down to us at the regional staff level. So just to put that out there, there's some real deep thought process around who exactly to have at the table, making sure that those voices that may not be heard very often are represented. So I just want to put that out there, that there has been some really deep thought around the staffing of that advisory council.
Cool. Thank you, Maggie. Next question, Richard Green. How did governance become a bad word? And I'm going to let Mark Anderson handle this. Go ahead, Mark.
So what I've heard others say, and I think it's true, is very few people come to our churches, come in the door as visitors looking to be on a committee. Even fewer of those come in our church doors looking to do governance at the church. They're looking to grow their faith. They're looking to express their faith in the world, and they're looking to build a bit larger community. So it's not that governance is a bad word. It's just not something that everyone wants to do. There's certainly a place for it. You can't do the stuff we want to do without people doing governance. Some of us enjoy doing governance more than others do. DeAnn was joking about that some. I know DeAnn well enough to know that she actually enjoys a lot of this governance work, as do I. We do feel like that is the role of the UUA board, is to do the governance work. And our role as elders, if we're not going to step up and be on the UUA board, is to go out and figure out how to grow this faith and do the work of growing this faith.
Thank you, Mark. Let me add just a little bit to that. You're right, Richard. It's not that governance is a bad word. It's that a middle level district board has nothing to govern. When it's a UUA trustees are guiding the staff, it's a conflict for us to guide the staff differently than what the UUA trustees is telling Peter Morales to tell his staff. And so that it's not that governance is a bad word, it's just there's nothing to govern. Okay? And so then it becomes more about building the faith for us. Okay, Richard Green again. Anybody else want to add to that? Are we okay?
And there will be places for governance. I mean, in what I see of clusters, I spent some time in North Texas. I was up there last week for one of the Selma anniversary events. There's governance at that cluster level. So there are actually more opportunities to step into governance outside of your church if you want them, as we build out these local clusters and justice ministries and other.
Cool. Yes. Thank you, Mark. Okay, Richard Green again. Please clarify the purpose, makeup, and limitations of the Regional Advisory Council. Should RAC be in place before districts dissolve? I might have answered that a little bit. We might have answered that a little bit, in that the purpose is to guide the Director of Congregational Life how best to support the congregations. And Maggie described some of the makeup of it. I know that Mid-South is sending Jill Austin to the team. We're pretty happy with that. And the limitations, obviously it's an advisory group to the Director of Congregational Life. So that would be the main limitation. There's no governing ability, there's no power. There's just hey, we get to speak into the Director of Congregational Life's ear and discuss these things. And so I know that he has talked about making sure that he does short-term and long-term, so that there's short-term work and then there's long-term visioning work with that group, in addition to with all of his regional leads for all of the districts in the UUA. I think being placed before the districts dissolve, I'm not seeing that would necessarily be necessary. Sorry, I'm repetitive. It's a little late. Because there's still there's still work to be done there. Mark, if you want to add something to that, help me out. I'm a little stuttery.
So the Regional Advisory Council is in place. So the district boards each of us appointed one person to it. As DeAnn said, they appointed Jill. Southwest, we appointed Erin Sullivan, so she's the young adult in the group. In the last 6 months, they put together the other members, including Mark Walls from Southwest and the community minister and so on. They're actually meeting and starting their work this spring before we get to the dissolution of the districts. But they're not necessarily going to be completely up and running. But that's a role, again, it's a linkage role. So it's Scott's committee to form and to mold. It's not something for us to put in place for him. And so whatever timeline works for him is the right timeline.
Good, thank you, Mark. I hope that answered your question, Richard. Pop up again if it didn't quite do that. Scott Cromer said, Googled UU Covenant of Understanding and I'm coming up dry. What? There's not many people accessing it? Can the link be posted to the Southern Region blog, or let me know if I should Google something else? Somebody help me. I think it's there.
The Covenant of Understanding isn't complete yet.
Got it. Thank you.
It has gone through, as DeAnn said before, it has gone through multiple reviews. And the last we heard, It had been reviewed with the UUA attorney, and he sent it back for some changes. So as soon as it should be finalized, and in fact, I made a note to check on this tomorrow, it should be finalized very soon, and we'll make sure that it gets posted as soon as it is finalized.
Thank you, Denise. Sorry about the confusion there. I misdirected that a little bit. Sorry.
No worries.
Maggie, you want to add to it? You want the next question?
Well, I just wanted to say that in the March 3rd FAQs that went out, there is some highlights that you can see from the Covenant of Understanding. So some of the most major pieces, the ones that are not the I dotting and T crossing, but the real gist of it is on the blog from the 3rd. So I just point you in that direction till the entire document is ready.
Good, thank you. All right, you're right, Denise. Richard Green likes to ask questions. This is
Yes, good questions.
good questions too. Why not let the Council of Elders function and prove itself for 2 years before the districts dissolve? Excellent question. I think that there's an important component of the dreamers of the dream here to be super involved in the implementation. And to be flat honest, doing both Elders Council and Board President, I don't have enough days in the week to do both. Mark and Denise are both nodding. How many phone calls in a week can we do? So I'm being glib, but it does go to the point in that I really believe that working to serve the faith through the Elders Council is more useful for my service time. It certainly is more of a spiritual experience for me, not to disrespect bylaws because they have their place, but it serves my faith too. And so that may sound selfish, but I really don't think that we have at this time sufficient energy to split our energy in that way, to do governance and the Council of Elders at the same time. Anybody else want to add to that? That's just kind of my opinion. Denise, go ahead.
Well, here's the good news. Of the 8 members of the inaugural Elder Council, first of all of them currently serve on one of the district boards, and precisely half of the individuals on the who will be on the Elder Council served on the team, the ministry team that worked to put the whole concept together. So Richard, I mean, you make a good point, is, you know, should we sort of test drive this, except that all 8 people have been in leadership roles. Half of them know the details of how this is supposed to work intimately. And probably most important of all to us is we have a lot of faith in these people. I happen to be one of them, but I mean, all of this is a huge leap of faith. And it's taken us literally 5 years from 2010 when we first started thinking about this until now. So we're taking a leap of faith, but we took a lot of little steps to get to the cliff, and now we're ready to jump.
If the assemblies are ready to jump.
If the assemblies are ready to jump, right.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay. Our dear friend Anonymous, thank you. Great question. Do CLF members fit into regionalization in any way? Who wants that one? Maggie, go for it. Thank you.
So I would think that this would be a very good place for one of our affinity clusters. This would be a way for members who are CLF members versus a congregation of the Southern region to be able to be together and to network with each other and to do the good work of the faith together. I would also consider that is a and beyond category, right? So we're always considering congregations and beyond. CLF is that and beyond. And that may be a really good role to be able to help some of the other and beyonds come up and to be able to do some of the social justice work that is needing and wanting to be done and is being done, but could be done with many more hands. So I would say that we're not limiting what this could look like. I say dream big, it doesn't cost anything. So the vision for some of these clusters could, because they come out of the congregation and they come out of the needs and the desires of our communities and of our congregations and of our members, kind of the sky's the limit on where we can help people to connect and build those relationships. So I would say yes, there is a place in that, and it would be in the cluster level.
Thank you, Maggie. I also see the CLF. I think we could add that to our tickler file that we build off of each of these webinars to make sure that, and there's probably a good spot on the Elders Council for at least a couple CLF people to assure that there's that connection going in. And so we'll make sure that we note that in there also. So great question, thank you. All right, Scott Cromer is back. Through careful observation, I have noticed that the bulk of the UUs I have seen are white and of a particular background. The UUA board is taking intentional steps to involve people of color as reported in the UU world, right? I'm hoping that we are considering similar intentional steps in order to grow the faith beyond its usual boundaries. Yeah, like Maggie was talking about the advisory council to Director of Congregational Life, that was super intentional in that. And yes, it's also intentional in our Elders Council, and I think that we'll see a lot of growth in that area as we build clusters, connecting congregations together. It's always been crazy to me. I live in the Atlanta area, and the metro congregations in Atlanta don't get together and do things except for a potluck in September. And that is a huge growth area for a cluster, which would definitely serve a lot of historically underrepresented people to be involved. And so, yeah, it's a huge part of everything that we do. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay. We have a statement. Hi, Katie Cartman. Not a question. For those looking for the FAQ, that was for the FAQ about elders just mentioned. It's at the blogspot, Southern Region sruuacom.blogspot.com. So that's our connection into the Southern region on the blogspot. And we'll hold up the banter here a little bit and talk. And if anybody is thinking of anything else, you can certainly add to more questions. And come on, help me banter.
Well, we do have a couple more of these webinars coming up. You can see on the screen. We have a Saturday and a Sunday session for those folks who we had a 1 or 2 daytime sessions, and we of course had a lot of evening sessions. So for those folks for whom that's not convenient, we've got a couple of these weekend sessions coming up. And then of course by mid-April, on the next slide, you can see we are scheduled to have the annual meetings. They will run concurrently. These are the locations for each of the district meetings. Not only will they run concurrently, but the business meetings will run concurrently. The keynote and comments from Reverend Morales will be live streamed to all of the congregations, and the vote will be taken at the same time. So, and there'll also be more opportunities to ask questions and have discussion about some of the implications and so forth. So we are really hoping for a robust turnout. And of course, there will, as always, there will be workshops and different activities depending on the location. So check the Southern Region website for more information about registration and schedules and that sort of thing, because we've got a lot of planning in the works.
Thank you, Denise. Scott's back. Thank you for your informative blog posts. We've been reinforcing them in our congregation's newsletters as you release them. Please continue them and consider aggregating all the links to one easily findable page on your website. Okay, duly noted. Margie Manning, who is not with us tonight, she writes professionally, and so she's been a big help to us in getting all of this information out. In addition to, it's been the epitome of shared ministry for the Southern Region newsletters, because it's the tag team of what the staff writes and what each of the councils, the task force that have put out into those newsletters. It's been a wonderful example of what I see as shared ministry and how we want to do things in the future between elders and the staff. So I'm glad you're sharing those. Share them widely. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
And DeAnn, if I might just add on to that, I'm feeling particularly emotional at the moment, because in the past 5 years, the board, we've had essentially 2 boards. Most of our boards have 2 or 3 year terms. So we've had turnover, and however many people that's been over the past 5 years since we started this in 2010, and almost to a person, every single member of those boards has participated, at the Mountain and at in Orlando. We had these ministry teams around the democratic process, around elderhood, around communications, around annual meeting planning. Those ministry teams were led by one of the presidents of one of the districts. And again, every single board member was assigned to a task force, and virtually all of them participated. So it has been a very amazing, hard, long, but amazing process. And of course, couldn't have done it without our wonderful staff holding our hands along the way and keeping us on the straight and narrow. So it is a true vision of what shared ministry should look like, I think.
I amend that. It's been a spiritual work. I mean, it really has been just spiritual work in visioning, digging deep. It's finding that extra little space to make sure that you've got time because of this commitment that you've made, and that's, some people call that something else, but to me that's kind of spiritual. It's one of those where you dig deep and touch something that's not usually touched, where that you got to find that extra little something every time. And this group of 4 presidents and their boards has been phenomenal to work with. It's been deep, wonderful work with each other, and each of us has showed up every single time that we've needed to, and it's been good work, really good work. And like Denise said, with Connie and Maggie and Christine and Natalie and Kathy and Ken and Carlton, and just hanging out and helping us out all over the place, and Jessica and Kathy on the side helping us too. Good stuff. So seeing no more questions doesn't mean that you won't think of them. I know that. So please, absolutely feel free to email any one of the district presidents. I'm DeAnn Peterson, Denise Rimes, Mark Anderson, and Margie Manning, and ask us those questions. And we'll either incorporate it into the next webinar or put it on the blog spot, whatever. We'll make sure, and in addition to, of course, personally answering it, there's that. But I know you'll think of questions, so please do ask them. Please do ask them, and go back to your congregations and recruit people to come to our annual assemblies. That would be fantastic. So on that note, I think we have nothing left to add for tonight. So we are somewhere, I think we're close to under our time schedule. Yeah, we are. Just a little bit over an hour. You are free to go, spread the word, evangelize the South. Thank you for coming tonight, everyone.